The dim light of the briefing room in Biggin Hill filtered through blackout curtains, casting long shadows across the wooden benches where the pilots sat. Lieutenant Jack Harlan slouched in his seat, fingers drumming on the scarred tabletop, his easy grin masking the knot twisting in his gut. At 24, he was the squadron's joker, the one who could lighten the mood with a quip even after a rough sortie. Beside him, Captain Eli Thorne straightened his tie, his cautious eyes scanning the room like he was plotting every escape route. Eli was the steady hand, the tactician who'd nursed more Mustangs back to base than anyone, always weighing risks against the odds. The door swung open, and Wing Commander Hargrove strode in, his face etched with the weariness of too many dawn patrols. He unrolled a map onto the table, pinning it down with a Luger trophy from some forgotten scrap over France. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice gravelly from cigarettes and shouted orders. "Today's the day we push the envelope. Berlin. Full escort for the heavies. Round trip if the Jerrys don't have other ideas." Jack leaned forward, whistling low. "Berlin? That's a hell of a haul, sir. Our birds can make it, but the fuel—" "Conservation's your middle name today," Hargrove cut in, tapping the map where red lines snaked from London eastward. "You'll launch from here, link up with the bombers over the channel, and stick with them to the target. Flak's thick as porridge around the capital, and their fighters will be swarming. BF-109s, FW-190s. The aces will be out. We expect intercepts from the east, maybe even jets if the rumors hold." Eli's brow furrowed, his mind already calculating. "Range is pushing it, sir. Without drop tanks, we're flirting with ditching on the way back." He wasn't one to challenge openly, but his questions always cut to the bone, born from too many mates lost to empty tanks or engine seizures. Hargrove nodded, unflinching. "Drop tanks stay on until you're over the lines, and we've got a new wrinkle. Reconnaissance photos show their airfield at Stocken's been reinforced. If you spot any high-value targets, fuel dumps, command posts, take the shot. But survival first." Dismissed. The room emptied in a murmur of boots on linoleum, the air heavy with the scent of oil and unwashed uniforms. Jack clapped Eli on the shoulder as they headed to the hangar. "Berlin by tea time. Think the Fräuleins are baking strudel for us?" Eli shot him a sidelong glance, half-smile cracking his reserve. "Save the wisecracks for after we land, Jack. Last time you joked about range, we nursed your kite on fumes." Outside, the April mist clung to the runways. The P-51 Mustangs lined up like sleek predators under the arc lights. Ground crews swarmed them, final checks on Merlin engines that purred to life with a throaty roar. Jack climbed into his cockpit, the familiar leather creaking under him, instruments glowing, faintly. His plane, christened Lucky Strike after his vice, bore fresh patches from shrapnel over the Ruhr. He ran through the checklist, hands steady despite the adrenaline prickling his skin. Eli's Mustang taxied beside him, the two birds gleaming in the pre-dawn gray. Over the radio, Eli's voice crackled. "Formation check. You good, Harlan?" "Right as rain," Jack replied, throttling up. The squadron, 8 planes strong, whittled from 12 after last month's losses, lifted off in sequence, wheels folding away as they climbed into the murk. The English countryside blurred below, patchwork fields giving way to the slate sea. As they crossed the channel, the bombers appeared on the horizon, a stream of B-17s and Lancasters, their bomb bays heavy, contrails stitching the sky. Jack slotted into position, wingtip to wingtip with Eli, the formation tightening like a fist. "Eyes sharp," Eli said over the comms. "Coast defenses inbound." The first flak bursts erupted as they neared the Dutch shore, black puffs blooming like deadly flowers. Shrapnel pinged off Jack's canopy, but he held steady, scanning the clouds for the telltale glint of enemy fighters. The challenge wasn't just the distance. London to Berlin was over 1,000 miles round trip, a gauntlet of enemy territory. But the toll it exacted. One wrong turn, one engine cough, and you'd be bailing out over hostile soil if you were lucky. Halfway to the IP, the initial intercept came. A flight of Me-109s dove from the sun, guns winking. Jack yanked his stick, the Mustang's nose rising as he rolled into a turn. Tracers zipped past, close enough to smell the cordite. "Bandits, 12 high," he barked. Eli was already vectoring, his voice calm amid the chaos. "I've got the leader. Cover my 6. Jack banked hard, the G-forces pressing him into the seat, and squeezed the trigger. His 50 calibers chattered, stitching the sky. 109 shredded, spinning earthward in flames. But the dogfight scattered the formation, bombers lumbering on alone for precious minutes. As the Germans broke off, low on fuel themselves, the cost hit home. 2 Mustangs trailed smoke, their pilots' voices fading to static. Pushing eastward, the Ruhr's industrial haze loomed, factories belching defiance. Jack's fuel gauge dipped, the Merlin sipping precious gallons. Eli's plane drifted closer. Plans holding, but Berlin's a meat grinder. We adapt or we don't come back. Jack nodded to himself, the cockpit a cocoon of whirring dials and distant thunder. The real fight was just beginning. The hum of the Merlin engine vibrated through Lieutenant Jack Harlan's bones as he nursed the Mustang higher into the dawn sky over the channel. Frost clung to the cockpit glass, blurring the horizon where England faded into a smudge of green. He'd left Biggin Hill just after first light, the ground crew's warnings about fuel trim echoing in his ears. "She's a long-haul bird today, sir," one had said, slapping the wing with a rag. Jack adjusted his oxygen mask, eyes scanning the altimeter. 20,000 feet and climbing. Berlin was a 6-hour gamble, round trip, and every minute counted against the Jerry's radar net. Below, the sea churned like hammered tin, dotted with Allied shipping lanes guarded by Spitfires. Jack's wingman, Captain Eli Thorne, matched his pace off the left wing, his own P-51 slicing the air in tight formation. Eli was the steady one, a tactician with a drawl that cut through radio static like a knife. They'd flown together since D-Day, trading stories of near misses over Normandy. "You think the Luftwaffe's still got teeth up there?" Eli's voice crackled over the intercom, casual as if they were buzzing an airfield for fun. Jack glanced at the fuel gauge, a reassuring needle halfway to full. "If they do, we'll clip 'em before lunch." But doubt gnawed at him. Intelligence briefings painted Berlin as a hornet's nest. FW-190s and Me-109s swarming from hidden bases, their pilots aces with kill tallies etched in squadron lore. The Mustang's range was its edge, slipping past the fighters that couldn't loiter so far east. Yet one flak burst or engine hiccup, and they'd be swimming home. They crossed the Dutch coast at Angels 25, the landscape unfolding in patchwork fields scarred by bomb craters. No contrails yet, but Jack's neck prickled. He toggled the radio to channel check, listening for the faint buzz of German IF. Eli's plane dipped slightly, a silent acknowledgement. They'd planned this run meticulously, hit the rail yards at Tempelhof, strafe the marshalling points, then ghost out before the escorts arrived. No heroics, just precision to choke the Reich supply lines. A sudden burst of static shattered the calm. "Bandits, 12 o'clock high." Eli's call was sharp, no trace of his usual drawl. Jack's heart slammed as he banked left, eyes straining against the sun's glare. There, silhouettes peeling off from a high cirrus layer, 4 of them, long-nosed like wolves. Focke-Wulfs, closing fast. How the hell had they been spotted so early? Jack throttled up, the Mustang surging forward. But the Germans were already diving, their radial engines roaring in pursuit. "Brake left, Eli. Draw 'em down." Jack yanked the stick, feeling the G-forces press him into the seat. Tracers arced past his canopy, close enough to smell the cordite. Eli peeled away, his guns chattering in response. One FW took hits, smoke trailing from its cowling, but the others pressed the attack, coordinated like a pack. Jack rolled inverted, spotting the lead ace's yellow nose, Luftwaffe markings, a Ritterkreuz glinting in the light. These weren't greenhorns. They were hunting. The fight dissolved into a swirling dogfight, altitudes bleeding away as planes twisted through the sky. Jack's world narrowed to the enemy in his gun sight, the Mustang's 50 calibers barking. He nailed a wingman, the FWW, erupting in flame and spiraling toward the fields below. But elation soured fast. Eli's voice cut in, strained. "Got one on my 6, Jack. Can't shake him." Jack inverted again, diving to cut the tail. The pursuing FW was relentless, its pilot jinking with lethal grace. Bullets stitched the air near Eli's fuselage, shredding a flap. Jack fired a deflection shot, grazing the canopy, but the German held course. Below, anti-aircraft fire bloomed from a coastal battery, black puffs marching upward like deadly applause. They were too low now, exposed. "Pull up, Eli. Head for the clouds," Jack broadcast, his own plane shuddering under evasive turns. The lead ace broke off, circling like a victor, but Jack knew better. These birds could outclimb them if they pushed it. Eli's Mustang wobbled, losing speed, but he complied, nosing toward a Thunderhead building over the Low Countries. The remaining FWs shadowed, cautious now, waiting for the mistake. As they punched into the cumulonimbus, rain lashed the wings, visibility dropping to 0. Jack's instrument spun wildly in the turbulence. "You hit bad?" he asked, voice tight. "Lost some hydraulics," Eli replied, static-laced. "But she's flying. That was too damn close. How'd they vector on us?" Jack didn't answer, mind racing. Sabotage? A lucky RDF fix? The mission was fraying at the edges, Berlin still hours away. He checked fuel again, down to 3/4, the dogfight burning precious gallons. They'd adapt or die trying. Emerging from the storm, the Germans were gone, scattered or low on ammo. But the sky felt heavier now, watchful. Pushing east, the Ruhr's industrial haze loomed on the horizon, factories belching smoke like wounded beasts. Jack led them higher, conserving energy. Eli's plane lagged slightly, a limp in its flight. "We press on?" Eli asked, the question hanging. "No choice," Jack said. "Berlin's waiting, and those aces, they'll be back." The stakes had sharpened, one more ambush, and the Mustang's legend might end in a farmer's field. The sky over the North Sea was a vast, unforgiving gray, the kind that swallowed sound and spat back only the drone of engines. Lieutenant Jack Harlan gripped the Mustang's stick tighter, his knuckles white against the worn leather. The P-51's Merlin purred steadily beneath him, but every vibration reminded him of the fuel gauge's merciless tick downward. They'd left Biggin Hill at dawn, a tight formation of 4 Mustangs tasked with escorting bombers to the Ruhr. But now, it was just him and Eli, the others lost to Flak or fighters in the chaos over the channel. "Bandit at 3 o'clock low." Eli's voice crackled over the radio, sharp and steady despite the strain. Jack banked right, eyes scanning the murk. There. 2 specks resolving into Messerschmitts, Bf-109s slicing upward like sharks from the waves. The Germans were aggressive today, vectored in by their radar wizards, cutting off the stragglers before the main force could regroup. Jack thumbed the mic. "I've got him. Stay high, Eli. Cover my 6. He pushed the throttle forward, the Mustang surging with that familiar kick, its supercharger whining as they climbed into the thinner air. The lead 109 was piloted by someone who knew his trade. It jinked left, avoiding Jack's initial burst from the .50 calibers. Tracers arced harmlessly into the clouds, and Jack cursed under his breath, feeling the G-forces press him into the seat as he rolled to follow. Below, the sea churned, whitecaps like distant explosions. Jack's mind flashed to the briefing room back at base. The maps marked with Flak corridors, the warnings about the new German tactics. But up here, it was instinct, pure and raw. The 109 twisted again, its nose flashing as it fired back. Shells pinged off Jack's wing, close enough to rattle his teeth. He hauled back on the stick, looping over the top in a move that strained the airframe, coming down on the bandit's tail. Eli's voice cut in. "Fox 2, braking left." Another 109 had slipped in behind Eli, but Jack caught the glint of tracers from above. Eli's Mustang spitting fire, forcing the German to peel away. For a moment, the sky cleared, sunlight piercing the overcast like a reluctant promise. Jack squeezed the trigger, walking his rounds into the lead 109's fuselage. Black smoke bloomed from its engine, and the plane yawed, spiraling toward the water in a trail of fire. "One down," Jack muttered, more to himself than the radio. But the victory felt hollow. His fuel needle hovered near bingo, and Berlin was still hours away. The mission brief had been clear. Penetrate deep, disrupt the factories, get out. No heroics. Yet here they were, down to 2 planes, with the Ruhr's defenses waiting like a hornet's nest. Eli rejoined formation, his voice laced with that easy drawl. "Nice shooting, boss. But we got an RTB, fuel's kissing empty." "RTB, return to base." Jack knew he was right. Pushing on meant gambling everything. But the bombers they were supposed to protect were ghosts now, vanished into the fray. If they turned back, the whole sortie might crumble. Jack scanned the horizon, the endless gray unbroken except for a distant smudge. Could be clouds, could be more fighters. "Negative," he said finally, the word heavy in his throat. "We press on. Berlin's the target. If we bail, those boys up front die for nothing." Eli didn't argue, but Jack could hear the hesitation in the silence that followed. They'd been through this before. The close calls, the mates who didn't come home. Eli was the cautious one, always calculating odds, while Jack was the fire, the one who believed in the long shot. The Mustangs droned eastward, the sea giving way to the faint outline of the Dutch coast. Flak bursts began to pepper the sky ahead, black puffs blooming like deadly flowers. Jack's heart rate steadied. This was the rhythm now, the push and pull of survival. He adjusted his oxygen mask, tasting the metallic tang, and wondered if the German aces waiting over the Reich knew what was coming. Their Mustangs, sleek and relentless, flying farther than anyone thought possible. As they crossed into enemy airspace, a new contact blinked on Jack's radar screen, a lone blip, high and fast. Not a 109, something bigger, sleeker. A Focke-Wulf 190 maybe, or worse. "Eyes sharp," Jack radioed. "We've got company." Eli acknowledged, banking to scan. The tension coiled tighter, the air thick with the promise of another dogfight. Jack's fingers itched on the stick. Whatever it was, it wouldn't catch them off guard. The blip closed rapidly, resolving into a twin-engine silhouette against the clouds, a Me-410 heavy fighter, probably out for reconnaissance. It didn't engage immediately, circling like a wary predator. Jack weighed his options. Ignore it and burn fuel, or turn and fight, delaying their run. Eli, take the high road. I'll draw it in. Before Eli could protest, Jack rolled inverted, diving toward the intruder, guns hot. The 410's pilot was good, evasive, firing warning bursts that stitched the sky. Jack weaved through them, the Mustang's agility at his edge. A lucky hit from the German's cannons grazed his canopy, spiderwebbing the plexiglass. Shards tinkled inside the cockpit, and cold wind howled in. Jack ignored it, lining up his shot. The 50s barked, chewing into the 410's wing root. Fuel leaked, igniting in a brilliant orange streak. The heavy fighter banked away, trailing smoke, but not before its tail gunner raked Eli's plane. Jack saw the hits, sparks along the fuselage. "You hit?" he demanded. "Minor," Eli replied, voice tight. "But she's limping. We can't take much more of this." Jack pulled up, rejoining as the 410 vanished into the haze, likely limping home itself. The cost was mounting. Fuel down to reserves, Eli's Mustang nursing wounds. Yet the Ruhr loomed closer, its industrial sprawl a dark smudge on the horizon. Jack glanced at his chart, the red pencil marks showing the flak belts. One more push. For the mission. For the guys who'd already paid the price. The sky over the North Sea had turned a bruised gray by the time Harlan's Mustang pushed into the thicker clouds. The P-51's Merlin engine humming steady beneath him like a faithful heartbeat. He'd lost sight of the bombers 10 minutes back, their B-17s lumbering eastward under the escort's protective weave. But the plan was etched in his mind. Link up again over the Ruhr, then press on to Berlin if the fuel held. Jack Harlan gripped the stick tighter, his gloved fingers aching from the cold that seeped through the cockpit canopy. At 25, he was the old man of the flight, with scars from D-Day runs still itching under his flight suit. But today felt different. Too far, too exposed, like betting the farm on a single hand. Eli's voice crackled over the radio, sharp and edged with caution. "Harlan, you seeing this? Instruments are dancing like they're at a hoedown. Altimeter's off by 50 feet already." Eli Thorne, steady as ever, flew wingtip to wingtip, a shadow in the mist, his olive drab paint blending with the overcast. "Copy that, Eli. Stay tight. We're not turning back for a little fog." Harlan's words came out clipped, the oxygen mask muffling his breath. He'd seen men crack under less, nerves fraying like old wire. But Eli was solid, the kind who argued just enough to keep you sharp without folding. Below, the sea churned invisible, a black void that swallowed any thought of bailout. The mission brief had hammered it home. Berlin round trip was uncharted for the Mustang, a 1,000-mile gamble on drop tanks and tailwinds. One leak, one stray flak burst, and they'd be swimming for Sweden. The formation broke through the cloud layer into a pale sun, the Mustang's props slicing clean air. Harlan scanned the horizon, his eyes watering against the glare. There, smudges on the glass, distant specks climbing from the east. "Bandits, 12 o'clock high." His call was calm, drilled into muscle, but his pulse kicked up. FBU 190s, 6 of them, the Luftwaffe's wolves circling for the kill. No time for the bombers now. This was personal. Eli's response cut through, adrenaline sharpening his tone. "I see him, boss. Let's give him a show." He banked left, his Mustang responding like a dancer. But Harlan held steady, throttling up to close the gap. The Germans were pros, aces probably, with kill tallies painted on their fuselages like trophies. One peeled off, diving sharp, its cannons winking fire. Tracers arced past Harlan's wing, close enough to rattle his teeth. He rolled inverted, the world flipping in a rush of blue and gray, and pulled into a tight spiral. G-forces pressed him into the seat, blood draining from his face, but he held it, leveling out behind the 190. His thumb hovered over the trigger, the 50 calibers hungry. Squeeze, bursts of lead tore into the enemy's tail, smoke blooming like ink in water. The German spiraled down, a flaming comet. But the others swarmed, their engines a distant snarl. "Brake right, Eli," Harlan yelled, yanking his stick. Eli complied, but a second 190 latched onto him, stitching the sky with shells. Harlan's heart slammed. He couldn't lose his wingman, not after the runs they'd shared since Normandy. Diving low, he came up under the Bandit, guns blazing. Metal shredded, the 190's engine coughing black. But return fire clipped his drop tank. Fuel sprayed, igniting in a whoosh that lit the cockpit orange. He jettisoned the tank, the explosion blooming behind like a farewell, and climbed hard, sucking air through the mask. 2 down, but the aces adapted fast, forming a loose wheel overhead. Eli looped back, his voice strained. "Got your 6, Harlan, but they're bracketing us, fuel's down to 60%. The math hit Harlan like a punch. Berlin was still hours out, and with the escort scattered, they'd burn dry before the return leg. He keyed the radio, ignoring the static. "Eagle Flight, this is lead. Engaging bandits. Hold formation. We'll clear 'em." No response from the squadron leader, who'd gone silent after the cloud push. Maybe hit, maybe jammed. It was on them now. A third 190 screamed in, guns chattering. Harlan evaded, pulling a high G-turn that grayed his vision. But Eli took the hit, smoke trailing from his wing. "I'm hit but flying." Eli's call was gritty, no whine, just fact. They flew throttled back, conserving what they could, trading altitude for distance. The Germans circled once more, probing, then broke east, low on fuel themselves, or waiting for reinforcements. Harlan exhaled, the cockpit reeking of cordite and sweat. The North German plain stretched below. Patchwork fields scarred by bombs, villages like toys under the midday pall. "You good?" "Yeah," Eli replied, voice steadying. But that was too close. What now? Push on without the heavies? Harlan glanced at his gauges. 55%, dropping steady. The plan had backfired. The early dogfight chewed their margin. Berlin's flak towers loomed in his mind, iron storms that had claimed dozens. But turning back now meant the mission died with them. Turning back meant empty guns, a milk run that mocked the crews they'd sworn to protect. "We link up or die trying. Stay with me." They droned on, the Mustang's shadows racing over hedgerows and canals, the air growing heavier with the scent of industry. Flak bursts dotted the distance, black puffs marking the bomber's path. Harlan's jaw set. The cost was mounting, a wingman limping, fuel like blood trickling away. But in the rear view, the downed 190's smoke still rose, a small victory etched in fire. They weren't aces for nothing. The Germans hadn't expected this far, this fierce. And neither, Harlan admitted silently, had he. The Mustang's engine growled low over the shattered spires of Berlin, the city a jagged scar beneath the midday haze. Jack Harlan gripped the stick tighter, his knuckles whitening against the worn leather. Sweat trickled down his temple, stinging the cut from yesterday's flak burst. Tom Riley, crammed into the rear seat, scanned the instruments with a furrowed brow, his voice crackling through the intercom like gravel. "Fuel's dipping below 20%, Jack. We nursed her this far, but that headwind's a bastard. If we don't turn back soon, we'll be walking home." Jack didn't look back. The target loomed ahead, the sprawling Luftwaffe airfield on the outskirts, its hangars glinting like bait in a trap. Intelligence said the aces were grounded there, Their Mi-109s prepped for a counterstrike. One bombing run, precise and dirty, could clip their wings before they swarmed the bombers tomorrow. "We're not turning yet," Jack muttered, banking left to skirt a low cloud. "One pass, Tom. That's all it takes." The altimeter ticked downward as they descended, the air thickening with the acrid tang of smoke from distant fires. Jack's heart pounded in rhythm with the Merlin engine's roar. He'd flown this bird from London, a grueling hop across the channel and into the Reich's heart. The P-51's range a secret weapon the Germans hadn't counted on. But secrets had a way of unraveling mid-flight. A flicker on the wingtip caught his eye. Flak blooming black in the sky, close enough to rattle the canopy. "Bandits at 3 o'clock high," Tom shouted, his caution fracturing into urgency. Jack twisted his neck, spotting the specks. 4 Mi-109s peeling off from the airfield, their pilots no doubt cursing the unexpected intruder. Leading them was a familiar silhouette. The black cross on the fuselage marking Oberleutnant Klaus Vogel, the ace with 18 kills and a grudge from a skirmish over Normandy. Jack shoved the throttle forward, the Mustang surging like a thoroughbred. The first burst of tracers whipped past, close enough to score the wing. He rolled right, pulling into a tight spiral that pressed him into the seat. "Hang on," he said, more to himself. Tom's hands flew over the controls, adjusting trim as the G-forces built. Vogel's squadron closed fast, their engines a high-pitched snarl. Jack glimpsed the German's face through the glass. Sharp features set in grim determination, no trace of the arrogance from radio taunts. These weren't green pilots. They were hunters, drawn by the lone Mustang's audacity. Jack leveled out, sighting the lead 109 in his gun sight. He squeezed the trigger, 50 calibers barking in staccato fury. Shells tore into the enemy's wing root, smoke trailing as it faltered. But the others swarmed. One dove from above, cannons flashing. Jack yanked the stick, the Mustang climbing steeply, but a round clipped the tail, shuddering the frame. Alarms wailed in the cockpit. Hydraulics hit. "We're leaking fluid," Tom yelled. "Controls are mushy." Jack's mind raced, the city blurring below. The airfield was in range now, bomb bay doors creaking open under Tom's frantic commands. "Drop 'em on my mark," Jack ordered, evading another pass. The Mi-109s circled like wolves. Vogel barking orders in clipped German over the open frequency, his voice laced with disbelief. "Ein Mustang? So weit im Reich? You fools fly to your death." The words stung, but Jack focused. He rolled inverted, the world flipping in a rush of gray sky and brown earth. Bombs away. 2 500-pounders plummeting toward the hangars. Explosions erupted, fireballs swallowing a row of parked fighters. Cheers almost escaped Jack's lips, but a fresh tracer storm forced him into a dive. Vogel matched him, their planes twisting in a deadly ballet. Jack's witty banter died in his throat. This was survival, raw and unforgiving. He pulled up hard, the Mustang groaning, and fired again. The German's canopy, shattered under the hail, Vogel's plane spinning earthward in a corkscrew of flame. The Ace's chute didn't deploy. Too low, too fast. Jack's stomach twisted, the cost hitting like a gut punch. One less killer in the sky, but a man all the same, plummeting into the rubble he'd helped bomb. The remaining 109s broke off, fuel or fear pulling them back. Jack nursed the wounded Mustang eastward, Berlin shrinking behind. Tom slumped against his harness, voice hoarse. "We did it, but she's limping bad. Berlin to London on this? It's suicide." Jack glanced at the fuel gauge, the needle flirting with empty. The return leg stretched like an eternity, winds shifting against them. Then we make it a miracle, he said, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. The engine sputtered once, a warning growl, as they crossed the Elbe. Home felt impossibly far, the human toll heavier with every mile. The sun hung low over the shattered spires of Berlin, casting long shadows across the rubble-strewn streets below. Jack throttled back on the Mustang's stick, feeling the P-51's engine hum with a weary rhythm as they banked west. The formation was thinner now. 3 planes instead of 8. The others lost to flak bursts or the sudden streak of Mi-109s earlier that morning. Tom's voice crackled over the radio, steady but edged with fatigue. Fuel's holding at 40%, Jack. But if we hit headwinds like the briefing said, we're cutting it close. Jack glanced at his gauges, the needle dipping just a hair lower than he'd like. The mission had been a brute, escorting the heavies to the heart of the Reich, watching B-17s unload their payloads on factories that belched smoke like dying dragons. They'd tangled with a squadron of FW-190s on the inbound leg, Jack nailing one with a deflection shot that sent it spiraling into the clouds. But the cost, Lieutenant Harris gone in a fireball, his chute never blooming, hung heavy in Jack's mind. No time for ghosts now. Berlin faded behind them, a smudge of gray against the horizon. "Stay sharp, Tom," Jack replied, his voice calm through the mask. "Those aces aren't done with us yet. Keep your eyes on 6 o'clock. He scanned the sky, the vast blue unbroken, except for wisps of cirrus drifting like forgotten promises. The Mustang's long-range tanks had given them the edge. No other fighter could make this round trip without refueling. But every minute burned precious avgas. Jack's hand tightened on the throttle. He was the flight lead, the one who'd volunteered for this deep penetration run to prove the Mustang's mettle. Brave? Maybe. Reckless? The brass back in London would decide that later. A glint caught his eye, high and to the north. A formation of specks resolving into shapes. Mi-109s, at least a dozen, their yellow noses marking them as JG-52's finest. German aces, the kind who flew like wolves, patient and lethal. Jack's pulse quickened. Bandits at 11 o'clock high. Tom! 12 of them, looks like. Brake left on my mark. The radio hissed with Tom's acknowledgement, his plane slipping into position off Jack's wing. No time for evasion. The Mustangs were built for this. Merlin engines roaring as Jack pushed the nose up, climbing to meet them. The first pass was a blur of tracers and twisting airframes. Jack rolled right, the G-forces pressing him into the seat as an 109 slashed past, its cannons winking fire. He hauled back, inverting to line up a shot, too late. The German pilot was good, braking hard and looping back. Below, Tom's Mustang danced in a tight turn, spitting lead that clipped a wingtip on one of the foes. "Got one smoking," Tom called, but his triumph cut short as another 109 latched onto his tail. Jack dove to help, the altimeter spinning wildly as they plunged through 15,000 feet. Wind buffeted the canopy, the world a kaleidoscope of blue and silver. He fired a burst, tracers arcing wide, then yanked the stick to avoid a counterattack. The aces were pressing, their experience showing in the coordinated dives and climbs. One Mustang couldn't outrun a pack forever, not with fuel sipping away. Jack's mind raced. Rally point over the Elbe, then push for the channel. But these boys weren't letting go easy. "Tom, scissors left. Now!" Jack barked, banking sharply. They wove through the German formation like threads in a loom, forcing the 109s to overshoot. One ace, his plane marked with a red Baron stripe, stayed glued to Jack's 6, bullets pinging off the Mustang's armor plate. Jack jinked, sweat beading under his flight suit. the radio filled with urgent chatter. "Brake high! He's on you!" A lucky burst from Tom splashed the tailing 109, debris spraying like confetti. They broke free momentarily, the Germans circling for another go. Jack leveled off at 10,000 feet, the English coast still hours away. His fuel gauge read 30%. Enough for the flight home, barely, if they nursed it. But the aces reformed, their leader wagging wings in a taunt, Jack's jaw set. These were the hunters who'd downed dozens, men forged in the Eastern Front's meat grinder. No moral high ground here, just survival, plane against plane. As the sun dipped toward the Rhine, the chase resumed. Jack led a shallow dive, drawing fire to cover Tom's low fuel warning. "I'm at 25, Jack. Can't shake this one." The cautious edge in Tom's voice sharpened. Tom, the steady one, who'd argued against pushing the range limits back at Debden. Jack twisted in his seat, spotting the persistent 109. He climbed, trading speed for altitude, then rolled over into a hammerhead stall. The Mustang hung, then dropped like a stone, engines bellowing as he aligned on the pursuer. The shot was clean, 20mm rounds chewing through the German's fuselage. The 109 erupted in flame, the pilot bailing out into the slipstream. Jack pulled up, heart pounding, only to see two more closing on Tom. "Evasive, Tom, I'm coming!" But the formation was fraying, the aces adapting, their tactics a grim ballet of intercepts and feints. Flak from ground batteries added to the chaos, black puffs blooming like deadly flowers. Miles slipped by, the German heartland giving way to rolling fields scarred by war. Jack's hands ached on the controls, every decision a gamble. One ace broke through, raking Tom's wing with cannon fire. Sparks flew, Tom's plane shuddered. "Hit bad, hydraulics out." Tom's words were clipped, fighting the stick. Jack surged forward, his Mustang's guns blazing. The ace veered, but not before grazing Jack's canopy with a burst that starred the plexiglass. They fought on, a desperate duo against the pack. The fuel needle crept toward empty, the horizon mocking their progress. Jack thought of the briefings, the maps marked with aces' kill tallies, men like Hartman, now gunning for American blood. No heroes here, just pilots enduring the grind. Tom's plane limped, trailing smoke, but he held formation, returning fire with grim determination. As dusk painted the sky in bruised purples, the Germans finally peeled off. Low on the engines roared like thunder trapped in tin cans as Jack Harlan nursed the Mustang back toward the channel. The Berlin skyline shrinking to a smudge on the horizon. His hands, slick with sweat despite the biting wind slicing through the cockpit, gripped the stick with a white-knuckled focus. The P-51's gauges flickered erratically, fuel dipping lower than it should, the oil pressure needle dancing on the edge of red. He'd pushed her hard, that long haul from Biggin Hill to the heart of the Reich, and now this desperate claw back to England, the aces they'd tangled with over the factories, those sleek FW-190s with their painted noses like snarling wolves. Hadn't expected the Mustangs to linger, let alone survive the gauntlet. But survival came at a price, and Jack felt it in every shudder of the airframe. Tommy's voice crackled over the radio, faint and laced with static. "Harlan, you copy?" That last burst from the flak wagons clipped something. My bird's trailing smoke like a chimney. Tommy Ruiz, the kid from Brooklyn with a mouth faster than his trigger finger, sounded winded for the first time Jack could remember. No jokes, no quips about Kraut pilots dancing the polka. Just the raw edge of a man staring down empty tanks. "Copy, Tommy. Stay tight on my 6. We'll nurse him home." Jack's words came out steady, but his mind raced. The mission brief had been clear. Strafe the synthetic oil plants on the outskirts of Berlin, draw out the Luftwaffe's best, and make it back to tally the kills. They'd done the first 2. 5 confirmed, maybe 7 if the gun camera backed it up. But the return, that was the real killer. The Mustang's range was legendary, but not invincible. Wind from the east, headwinds that clawed at their speed like invisible hands. And now this. A slow leak somewhere in the lines. The Merlin engine coughing like an old smoker. Below, the German countryside blurred into a patchwork of fields and forests, dotted with anti-aircraft batteries that hadn't fully woken yet. Jack banked left, scanning the sky for shadows. The aces were out there, regrouping. Hauptmann Erich von Stahl, the one with the red serpent on his tail. That bastard had nicked Tommy's wing during the pullout, forcing the evasion that burned precious fuel. Von Stahl's squadron had the drop on them initially, vectors from their radar guiding them like ghosts. But Jack's flight had turned the tables, the Mustang's altitude advantage letting them dive through the pack like hawks on pigeons. Still, the cost lingered. Ensign Hale's plane spiraling into the Elbe, a fireball that haunted Jack's peripheral vision even now. A blip on the radar, faint but closing from the northwest. Jack's heart kicked up. Bandit at 2 o'clock low, Tommy. Looks like they're sniffing for blood. He throttled back slightly, conserving what little he had left. The Mustang responded with a growl, her wings slicing clean through the thin air at 20,000 feet. Jack remembered the ground crew back at base, Old Man Wilkins wiping grease from his hands as he topped off the drop tanks. "She's got the legs, Lieutenant," he'd said. "London to Berlin and back, if you don't get greedy." Greedy? Was that what this was? Pushing for that extra strafing run on the dispersal yards, watching the Me-109s scatter like roaches. Tommy's reply buzzed in. "I see 'em. 2, maybe 3. Focke-Wulfs, painted up fancy. Von Stahl's boys?" The static swallowed the end, but Jack didn't need to hear it. The Germans were relentless, their aces honed by years of this meat grinder. Jack had read the intel. Von Stahl had 28 kills, a Ritterkreuz around his neck, the kind of pilot who flew like he owned the sky. They'd traded passes over the city, bullets stitching the clouds. But the Mustang's 650 calibers had spoken louder. 1 down, smoking into the spree. Yet here they were, pursuing. Jack rolled into a gentle turn, drawing the bandits higher. The fuel warning light blinked insistently now, a red eye in the dim cockpit. He could jettison the empty drop tanks if they hadn't already gone. Wait, no. One still clung stubborn under the wing, dead weight dragging them down. "Tommy, drop your externals if you haven't. Lighten the load." His own voice echoed hollow in his helmet, the oxygen mask chafing his chin. The cold seeped in, numbing his fingers, but he couldn't afford gloves. Precision was all that stood between them and a splash in the North Sea. The lead FW closed, its nose glinting in the weak sun. A burst of tracers arced past Jack's canopy, close enough to rattle the frame. He yanked the stick, barrel rolling left as the Mustang's Merlins screamed in protest. G-forces pinned him, blood rushing from his head. "Brake right," he barked, into the radio. Tommy's plane flashed by, guns chattering. The wingman was good, witty on the ground, lethal in the air, but green compared to the wolves on their tail. A second burst from the German, stitching the sky where Jack had been a heartbeat before. They weaved through the pursuit, the Mustang's superior turn radius giving them an edge. Jack lined up a shot, squeezing the trigger. His guns barked, rounds hammering the FW's engine cowling. Black smoke bloomed, the bandit veering off with a dying wail. 1 down. But the fuel, God, the fuel. The gauge read critical, the engine sputtering as if gasping for breath. Tommy's voice cut in again, urgent. "Harlan, I'm down to vapors. If we don't shake these clowns soon..." "Hold formation. Channel's 20 minutes out." Lies, maybe. The map in Jack's mind blurred with fatigue. Von Stahl's plane peeled in from above, a shadow diving like a falcon. The Germans' cannons flashed, and Tommy's Mustang jerked, a plume of glycol trailing from the radiator. "Hit! I'm hit!" Tommy's shout was raw, no filter left. Jack twisted into the attack, climbing to intercept. The two planes converged in a deadly spiral, metal screaming against the wind. Von Stahl's FW was nimble, but the Mustang was faster, her liquid-cooled engine giving her the climb. Jack fired a deflection shot, rounds chewing into the tail. The German broke. The Mustang's engine coughed like a dying beast as Jack nursed it over the channel, the English coast a hazy smudge on the horizon. Berlin was behind them now, a smoldering memory etched in flak bursts and the acrid tang of burning fuel. His hands, slick with sweat, gripped the stick, every vibration a reminder that this bird had given all it had. Below, the waves churned indifferent, swallowing secrets of the war without pity. "Jack, you copy? That was too damn close back there." Tom's voice crackled over the radio, faint but steady from the wingman's position. The kid's P-51 hung off Jack's left flank, its silver belly scarred from a grazing 20mm round. Tom had been the cautious one from the start, always double-checking maps, rationing ammo like it was his last cigarette. But today, he dove into that swarm of Messerschmitts like a man possessed, buying Jack the seconds he needed to line up the drop. "Yeah, I copy. Just get us home, kid. No heroics now." Jack's throat burned from the oxygen mask, words tasting metallic. He glanced at the gauges. Fuel needle flirting with empty, oil pressure dipping low. The mission had been madness from the briefing, deep penetration escort to hammer the Reich's factories. But the Mustangs weren't supposed to tangle with aces over the heart of the fatherland and limp back. Those German pilots, legends in their Luftwaffe cockpits, had swarmed like hornets, expecting easy prey. They'd never figured on the range, the surprise of Allies striking so far inland and vanishing like ghosts. A shadow flickered across the water, his own, elongated by the low sun. The early plan had been simple: fly high, hit hard, evade. But the Flak had shredded their formation mid-run, and Harris went down in flames over the spree, his voice cutting off mid-curse. 3 men out. Just Jack and Tom now, the weight of it pressing heavier than the G-forces. Harris had been the witty one, cracking jokes over the intercom to cut the tension, his laughter a shield against the fear gnawing at them all. Without him, the cockpit felt hollow, echoes of his last words looping in Jack's mind. "Give 'em hell, boys." Tom's plane waggled its wings, a silent check-in. "Fuel's tight, but we're making it. Saw a couple of those aces peel off. Thought they had us for sure." His voice held a tremor, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. They'd adapted on the fly, Jack fainting low over Berlin's defenses, while Tom climbed for the sun, drawing fire like a decoy. It wasn't teamwork from the manuals. It was desperation. 2 pilots stitching survival from chaos. One Ace's 109 had clipped Tom's tail, but the kid had rolled and fired back, sending the Germans spiraling into the clouds. A small victory, but it cost them. Tom's hydraulics were shot. Landing would be a gamble. The coast sharpened into cliffs and beaches, Dover's white scars welcoming them like old scars. Jack eased back on the throttle, the Merlin engine protesting with a whine. Anti-aircraft batteries dotted the shore, but they were silent, Allies recognizing their own. "Base, This is Mustang lead. 2 souls inbound, banged up but breathing. The response came quick, clipped efficiency. Vectors in clearance, medics on standby. They touched down in tandem, tires screeching on the runway's wet tarmac, a light drizzle slicking the world gray. Jack's bird shuddered to a halt, props winding down to silence. He popped the canopy, gulping cool air that smelled of salt and victory's bitter edge. Ground crew swarmed, faces smudged with oil, shouting questions he couldn't yet answer. Tom taxied up beside him, climbing out with a limp, waving off the medics with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. They met halfway down the taxiway, clasping shoulders under the fading light. No speeches, just the shared nod of men who'd stared into the abyss and pulled back. Harris's loss hung between them, unspoken. The empty bunk in the ready room, the letters to write home. The war had taken its toll again, a notch deeper on their souls. But they'd flown the impossible route and returned. The German aces would puzzle over it in their briefings, wondering how shadows had pierced their skies and slipped away. As the sun dipped, painting the hangars in orange, Jack lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like contrails. Tomorrow would bring more sorties, more risks. But for now, the Mustangs rested, guardians of a fragile dawn.